Folks, happy Friday and welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson and I'm here with my partner in crime,
Todd Peterson. Jason, it's Casual Friday. We got hoodies and flannel. I'm liking it here as we talk about something that is going to get everyone's blood boiling, I imagine, today.
Oh my gosh, I gotta say, we were talking about what we wanted to dive into today, and we had to land on congressional stock trades and how these criminals are up there in Washington, and they're saying they're doing these things that rip off the American people. They're cutting these backwater deals, and the stock trading is the most blatant example of that. And it was funny on the heels of, for those who don't know, Patrick Mahenry, if you've ever seen him, he's the little goofy looking dude with a bow tie that had the hammer when they got rid of Kevin McCarthy. He was talking this week. He said $176,000 a year really isn't that much money. And like we probably need to pay Congress people more to get more money. Todd, what do you think? 176,000, is that not enough?
I mean, that seems like enough to me, Jason, but what Patrick is not telling you is how many millions of dollars he and his colleagues are making on the side in their portfolios. So, look, there is zero pity party for me. 174, I saw a tweet from Cernovich. I like him on Twitter, saying, you're paying rent in two cities, you're traveling, this and that, you're taking care of a family. Like, that's a stretch of an argument, but maybe. But man, Jason, when we start digging into their stock portfolios, 174, forget about it. These guys are making millions of dollars behind the scenes in their lobbying groups. So no, they do not need a raise. I'd love to see them get paid $0. You're supposed to be doing a service to me. You're supposed to do it for a short period of time and then head back to home and get a job in the real world. You're not supposed to make a career out of living in Congress.
And that's actually an excellent point, Todd, that is lost on everybody. When we set up the U.S. federal government, it was supposed to be small and constrained, and it wasn't supposed to be something that you would go into and it would become your life's work. It was something kind of like your homeowners association, if you've ever lived in a townhouse association, where you go in, you serve on the board of directors for 5 years, you do the best you can, and then you go back out into the real world. Because if all you do is live in that swamp that is DC with all those awful people, you are going to become one of those creatures. So yeah, it's remarkable, but we need to go a little bit of a different direction before we get into these criminals and what they're doing with stock trading. One of our messages on the Freedom from the Press podcast, people say, why do you call it Freedom from the Press? And we say the media lies to you. The media, your politicians lie to you. Now, for those of us that are on the right, we lived through decades. I'm about 50 years old. I lived through decades where the elite class of Republicans screwed myself and people like me over. The poor white working man, they would throw out some patriotic slogan, they'd throw a flag on it, and we just, oh, what do you need me to do? You need me to go serve in the military so I can go get killed in Iraq so that you can make money from a military industrial complex? Oh, no problem. And we marched lockstep behind conservatives. The whole time, Democrats were saying Republicans are the party of the rich, they're screwing you over, all that stuff. They're owned by big business, they're owned by corporations. And many of us saw it and kind of felt that. And then when President Trump came down the escalator, he exposed all that. Like, not just did he expose the corruption on the Democrat side, but he woke up everybody on the Republican side. All the working class people like me and Todd and you folks watching it, he woke us up. We understand that Mitch McConnell is awful and he is screwing you as a working class American citizen over. Why we call it Freedom from the Press? Because by getting information from sources like this, you're going to break free of that news cycle. People also ask, why do we have the goofy little guy in our American Tribune logo? His name is Tiberius Gracchus. Back in the Roman Empire, this guy led a revolt of the working class people against the elites, because the games that was happening with the elites would keep the citizens distracted. They'd keep them distracted by running gladiator games or doing different things or starting a war against another country. Meanwhile, they were screwing over the populace. And what Tiberius did is he started educating how they were screwing you over. And then there became an uprising. The other thing they were doing in the Roman Empire is they're having different groups fight each other. Tell me if you've heard this before. And that's where one thing we always ask people that listen to our show, share this with somebody, especially somebody you might not politically agree with. Because while many of us on the right side have woke up, President Trump woke us up, and now we see the corruption of the Republican Party, people on the left don't see the corruption on the left. And we're going to go through a few ways how they're brainwashing them. But if we can wake up the average citizen on the left, your neighbor who's a Democrat, who really thinks Trump is a dictator, who really thinks he's going to lock people in gulags. I mean, if we can wake him up, we can help save this nation. And that's why part of why we do what we do. Hey, thanks a lot for sharing. Todd, thoughts on that? I dropped just a lot of stuff.
I love it. I'm here. I was sipping my coffee, just taking it in with the rest of us here. Yeah, the old bread and circus tricks. We have seen this play out since Roman times. We've got it today. You could say it's professional sports, Hollywood. We've got our entertainment. We're nice and comfortable in our homes all the time. Meanwhile, the republic is burning to the ground. And look, if you're sharing this, we appreciate that. They don't have to agree with us, Jason. We'd like them to, but what they can't do is say that we're wrong. You cannot say that the media is telling you the truth. You cannot say you're getting the whole story anymore. And you can't say that the attacks on Donald Trump are fair and warranted. So look, at the end of the day, you got different feelings about it. I can't necessarily change your mind, but you can disagree with opinion, but you can't disagree on the facts here. And that's what we're trying to lay out with you today. And again, it all goes back. We've seen this script play out over and over again. And Jason, you made that point about dividing us so that we stay distracted. Man, is that truer than ever before.
Oh, yeah. And actually, when we get into the stock trading, this is the prime example of what they are doing for us, against us. Working class Americans want congressional leaders not trading stocks. They think it's bullshit. They think that they're stealing. They're using insider information. They're making political decisions to enrich themselves. The average citizen on the right and the average citizen on the left, we agree on that. Your neighbor with the Joe Biden flag, he doesn't think that congressional leaders should trade stock. Just like you, if you're a Trump supporter like I am, don't think the congressional leaders should pay stock. But why do they not? Why do we not get together and stop them? Or why do our political leaders not do it? Because on the left, Todd, let's play the Whoopi quote. This is the kind of nonsense that they're spewing on that side.
I'm going to be, on day one, I'm going to be a dictator. Who says it to you, tells you, I'm going to put you people away. I'm going to take all the journalists, I'm going to take all the gay folks, I'm going to move you all around and disappear you. If that's the country you want, you know who to vote for. If that's not the country you want, you have to make a decision.
Todd, what do you think?
It's insane. We've done the Trump hoax list before. I think we have to add on, I'm going to be a dictator quote, add that to the list of just some other, it's another media lie, outright lie. We've played the clip here before where Donald Trump in jest says, yeah, I'm going to be a dictator because we have to close the border. And again, Jason, you talk about your neighbor voting for Biden. Everyone that is a normal human being wants a secure southern border. They don't want all these terrorists coming in. They don't want all these unknown criminals coming in. They want a secure country because without a border, you are not a free nation. And they want their freedom and liberty here, and they want their safety for their families. But they live in a different world. I think Whoopi Goldberg and people that, and a lot of the far left, they believe this. They don't see that their guy, Joe Biden, right now is locking up political prisoners, that he's clamping down on your freedom, that he's stealing your money from you. They actually think Joe Biden's doing a good job and that Trump would be a dictator.
Yeah. Oh, hey, and tune in today, Split Rock Coffee. Shout out to the Split Rock guys. I don't know about you, Todd, but that's what I'm drinking today, my medium roast.
And I've got the breakfast blend. Folks, use promo code TODD10. That's me, TODD10, to get some delicious coffee roasted right here in Minnesota, where Jason and I are, by some disabled veterans. Two of the best guys, Ron and Paul, that you're going to meet. Jason and I meet with them on a monthly basis. Just good, wholesome, down-to-earth people, salt of the earth, and they make some delicious coffee. SplitRockCoffee.com. Use promo code TODD10.
Yeah, and it's coffee you can drink all day. But back to an important thing for us on the right to understand. So we're critical thinkers. We kind of understand things. I think a lot of times on the right, we tend to be more logical than emotional. until we get mad. Like I'm mad today. I might have had a little too much Split Rock coffee, a little fired up. But people on the left believe that bullshit that Whoopi Goldberg just said. Now, Whoopi is part of the elite class. Remember, we talked about the elites are getting the citizens to fight against each other. Whoopi is a paid provocateur to say stuff like that. And like Lee pointed out, by the way, Lee, thanks for tuning in. That is not what Trump said. Now, here's what's remarkable, Lee. You could take what Trump said and you could show it to your neighbor, and the neighbor still wouldn't believe it. He'd say, oh, well, yeah, no, he didn't mean that or something. That's how deep their brainwashing is. And before we're too critical of the left, understand pre-President Trump, many of us on the right were just as brainwashed.
Yeah.
You know, right now, if we would not have had the great Trump awakening, as Joe Biden is sending missiles into Iran, or as we're sending trillions over to Ukraine, he would have us on the right lining up to go die in some bloody conflict in Ukraine so these frickin' oligarchs in the military industrial complex can get rich. Had Trump not woke us up, had the military not gone woke, thank God those two things happened, because your friends, my friends, your kids, my kids, we would be throwing our red, white, and blue shirt and we would be storming off to Ukraine. But President Trump woke us up to that game. Now, people on the left listen to folks like Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg knows that if she keeps the people, your average citizen on the left, distracted and angry and thinking President Trump is going to overthrow the government or whatever nonsense she says, then she knows they're not going to wake up and join with us and do something like, let's stop congressional stock trading. And it's truly remarkable what Whoopi Goldberg and people like that. But like I say, don't judge them too harshly, because without President Trump, we would be just as dense as they are.
Yeah, Jason, think back to, let's say, 2012. I mean, I pulled the lever for Mitt Romney in 2008. I was like, John McCain's the man here. We knew that there was a swamp, but conservatives who want a limited government, who just want to be left alone, who just want to get along with everybody and not have this forced divisiveness forced on us by the woke ideology. We said, well, they're a Republican. It must be different. I think we knew deep down that we were getting conned, but we didn't want to believe it necessarily. Kentucky keeps sending Mitch McConnell to the Senate. Texas is sending Dan Crenshaw to the House of Representatives. I mean, we could run down a list of most of the Republicans in Congress. They're the same exact mold. Nikki Haley, thank goodness for Rand Paul. He came out and said, never Nikki today. Nikki Haley, who left South Carolina's governor's office, went to Boeing, went to the UN, and somehow she thinks that we, the small government conservatives, are going to vote for her, who is really no different than Hillary Clinton, the woman that she has praised in the past. The Great Awakening is real. It is here. Jason, you and I, the people watching us here, and hopefully the people that you're sharing this with, get the same message of like, we're done with business as usual. We don't want these neocon swamp creatures anymore. Republicans are not all the same, and it's time that we primary these guys out of office.
And it's time that we unite as American people. That is what America First, Make America Great, MAGA is. It is not a Republican ideology.
Mm-hmm.
It is the working class of America standing up and saying we're no longer going to get screwed by these oligarchs, by these corporations, whether you're on the right or the left. Todd talked about Nikki Haley. Go into her background. She was serving as a UN ambassador. She was in debt. She wasn't really making any money. She was broke. Sounds like she was going to file for bankruptcy. She serves for a year and a half and she leaves the UN ambassador. Broke as a joke. Where'd she go? She went on Boeing's board. A couple years later, she has a net worth of $8 million. $8 million US was what she was worth. She went from bankruptcy to $8 million in a couple of years. And now she's running for president. And what's her platform? We need to stand with Ukraine and stand with Israel. Who gets rich off us doing that? Boeing and all this military industrial complex.
Yeah, Jason, let's make a point on that. I fly commercial aircraft, Boeing 737. I think a lot of folks out there like it's the American plane making version of, Airbus in Europe. No. Do you know where Boeing's money comes from?
Where?
You know what? works closely with the Department of Defense too. You think they're just making the Boeing 737 folks for Delta Airlines and United Airlines? Get out of here. There's a reason Nikki Haley promotes war across the world now, because her benefactors at Boeing on the board get nice and rich off of her doing that.
Yeah, and it's funny sticking with politics too when you talk about people that, like, Nikki Haley got adopted into that elite class. Nikki Haley, to be honest, probably 5-10 years ago was one of us. She'd probably be like you or me. She was working hard. She was serving her country as governor, as UN ambassador, and she wasn't getting rich. And this is what happens to these bastards in Washington. They start out with the best of intentions to be nice, normal people. Nikki Haley from 10 years ago would see this uniparty clown that's trying to enrich the military industrial complex. Nikki 10 years ago would hate that Nikki. Like, that Nikki's John McCain. Nikki did not support the military industrial complex, but she got sucked in and she took the money. Always follow the money. And Audrey nails it on the head. We all want Trump. And that's why people say, why do you support Trump? He said this dumb thing, or he did this dumb thing. Why do I like Trump? One, the country ran pretty good. Life was better other than leftists losing their mind. Two, Donald Trump woke myself and many other people up to the corruption in Washington, and he wasn't afraid to go in there. I remember the Hillary moment where they're at the debate stage where it's like, you're a tax cheat. And he's like, I'm not a tax cheat. I'm just using your tax rules. You don't like them, change the rules.
All your friends and donors use the same rules that I do. Donald Trump in 2016, I love Donald Trump still, but man, the Trump we got in 15 and 16 was eye-opening. He was fantastic.
Right. Well, and it's funny too, as you look at, oh yeah, Julius, Trump picked the torch at Ross Perot years before and was more successful. That's why I'm for Trump. Republicans are as much as swamp creatures as Democrats with different ideologies. Julius, if you were in Minnesota, I would hug you. By the way, fun fact, my first presidential vote ever, Ross Perot. Back in the 90s.
You got street cred, Jason. Ross Perot.
Yeah, I remember I was growing up and I'm like, I was poor white trash. We grew up in a trailer park, right? And my dad was a Marine. He's like, you should go serve in the Marines and, do you some good. And I'm like, I'm patriotic. I love America. But I'm like, Dad, it's just these rich Republicans sending poor folks like us to go die in some desert so that they can get another oil deal or a thing. And it was funny, for a long time, you were called a conspiracy theorist if you felt that way. Now you're called normal. Like, people are like, oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Did you see the latest recruiting numbers from the military? White males specifically used to make up the bulk of it, 44,000. They're down to like 25,000. As a percent, they lost almost half of their recruiting class of white males, because guess what happens after you villainize them and lock them up in prison just for being a white Christian male for years?
Right. It's ridiculous. And all of this is so predictive, and the outcome you can see coming a mile away. Speaking of mile away,
here we are.
I got to give Todd some credit. Todd, you want to play the video?
I wish I had my Nostradamus get up here right now. You have your tinfoil hat. I should have put on my little fortune-telling deal.
Yeah.
Are we going to Michelle?
Let's go to Big Mike.
The things that keep me up, because you don't have control over them. Mm-hmm. And you wonder, where are we in this? Where are our hearts? What's going to happen in this next election? I am terrified about what could possibly happen, because our leaders matter. Who we select, who speaks for us, who holds that bully pulpit. It affects us in ways that sometimes I think people take for granted.
I wonder why she's getting so much media attention, Jason.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Big Mike, he was on a podcast talking about how this upcoming election keeps him up at night. Todd and I did an episode about 6 weeks ago. That's why I say we had to give him credit. I still have our sheet that's tracking all of our wagers.
On the line too, Jason.
What's that?
How much money is on that too?
Oh yeah, we got. What do we have? Was it $200 we put on it?
I think we had 4 $50 bets. Yeah.
Yeah. We had 4 $50 bets, and it was the first question was, does Joe Biden, is he going to be the nominee? Yes or no? Is it before or after the primary? And then who does it go to? Todd and I both agreed Biden won't be the nominee. Folks, Joe Biden's fading fast. Man, if you've ever
Where
had
is he?
parent...
Have you heard of him lately?
Oh my God. Like, we're going to war in Iran and he's
Let's see.
like...
Austin's missing. Biden, no one's seen him all week. It's getting pretty
Right.
wild.
And if you've ever had a parent or grandparent who got really old and collapsed mentally, and you saw just like once you hit a certain point, like it's not like this gradual decline. It's like thunk. Like that's Joe Biden. The guy can't complete a sentence, and he wasn't all that sharp when he took office. And then we were discussing about was it before or after the primary, and we were discussing who it would be. I landed on Gavin Newsom, and it's funny. One of my co-hosts for my podcast during the week, Wayne Dupree, he thinks it'll be Kamala Harris because he doesn't think they can get rid of him. Like Kamala Harris is so bad. I don't care if they got Joe Biden elected. Like Kamala Harris is so much worse. I don't think they can.
And look, if they can get rid of Joe, who's president, you don't think they can get rid of Kamala, who's the vice president? And Jason, I got to say, Big Mike is the upgrade in every way possible. She checks the same boxes as Kamala, but she's got the Obama name. She can actually speak. I don't doubt, I should think she's probably fairly intelligent, even though she has all these awful ideas. And Jason, what I didn't mention when I picked her the last go round, guess where they're having the DNC convention?
Chicago.
I didn't even put that together. In Barack Obama's backyard in Chicago. You can't tell me they're not going to parade her out on stage at the Chicago convention.
Well, and it's important to understand, and I'm coming around to Todd's way of thinking on this. Like I thought Big Mike was a long shot. I didn't think it was crazy, but now we talk about predictive programming and how they grease the skids and how they line it up. Now, here's what's important to understand with Barack and Michelle Obama. They were nobodies. They were nobodies. They were working class folks. They went to, fancy schools or whatnot. He became he wrote some books. He became a state senator, and then he ended up in the U.S. Senate, like out of nowhere. Really skilled orator. But his whole angle was racism. And if you think back to America pre-Barack Obama, I would say race relations were the best they've been in the history of the country.
Polls back that up. Your lived experience backs it up. Nobody really thought about race circa 2005, 6, 7.
Yeah, if you go back in the time machine, however many years ago, like, frankly, we kind of reached a point where we didn't really care. You know what I mean? We didn't talk about it, do histories of searches of racism. Now, anything that happens is a function of race. You want to fire a black person, it's because they're black. Where's my reparations? None of this stuff. We were just Americans. We weren't African Americans. We weren't descendant. There wasn't all this white rage. There wasn't all this nonsense. But why does the elite class like Barack and Michelle do that? To distract you. Because I tell the story. I grew up poor white trash in a little community in Minnesota. When I first moved to the cities, I moved to inner city Minneapolis. And I took a job working retail in North Minneapolis, which for those who aren't from Minneapolis, that's the hood. And I remember like the dudes there, all the poor black dudes, there was like 3 black dudes in my whole town growing up. And when I went to work in the Twin Cities, I was the minority. And I remember we went out for a beer after work, and I was like the white guy in the VFW. And it was so funny because those black dudes and we had so much in common. We were poor. We just wanted to make a better life for ourselves. We were fairly religious. We knew people that had drug and alcohol problems because growing up in the trailer park, that happens. And it was remarkable because that's when I first kind of realized, like, yeah, black people and white people really aren't any different. The fact that we're poor probably unites us more than the race or the color of our skin. I have more in common with the poor black dude than I did with the rich people in the town I grew up in, just because our life experiences were different. But Michelle Obama and Barack Obama came and they destroyed this country because they knew if they could lean into that race thing, that would make them, you could never criticize them. And that became their hook. And now it's all we talk about, however many years later. It's
Jason,
truly
I think
sad.
that's an important point because you said the destruction of America with this. I think it goes both ways. A lot of the times people will say, why are you focusing on the culture war? You should focus on ending the Fed or abolishing the Department of Education or what have you. Yes, and the culture war is intentionally insidious. It is doing real damage. So yeah, we're going to fight the culture war because it goes hand in hand at this point. The elites are intentionally using it as a cudgel to divide people, white and black. but they're also doing it because it helps advance their end game here. So it's both. You can say, yes, it's a culture war issue, and it is also tied into the fact that it is one more way, and it's a very powerful way now for the elites to control you, because who's going to speak out? They don't want to be branded a racist or a white supremacist. God forbid someone finds out you voted for Trump in the workplace there. Now you're suddenly, Hitler 2.0. So it all connects. It's not one or the other. This is a both.
Right. And the elites are telling you what they're doing. They're showing you what they're doing, and they're just daring you to do anything about it. If you think of this week in the news, so Joe Biden has 91 felony charges against President Trump. It comes out that Fannie's prosecutor met with the Joe Biden White House.
Hold on, Jason. Lover/prosecutor.
Yeah. Do you want to tell that story, Todd?
I mean, I think it speaks for itself, but I mean, you can't make this up. This is a movie script. So Fannie Willis, DA down in Georgia, who is a nobody. She is unintelligent. She has no career prospects other than she happens to have this position, and she wants to make a name for herself by going after Donald Trump. The prosecutor in her county, who she's having an affair with, so he's getting divorced, I believe, he meets with the Biden administration right around the same time these charges come out here. I mean, this interconnected triangle of lovers and Democrats and Biden officials. I mean, if you can't see that this is all scripted, all corrupt, and all intentional just to go after Trump, none of this is meaningful that they're doing here. But but Jason, I love the angle that she was also sleeping with the person going after Trump, and he happened to meet with the Biden, as if like she had this degree of separation she thought existed.
Well, yeah, and it's funny too, because how it works is she works for the state and they hire law firms to do work for them. She hired this really expensive law firm, gave him $650,000, starts banging the dude at the law firm. He uses that money, bills back the state for these trips they took, these romantic rendezvous where they were like work trips so they could focus on the case. Turns out they were bumping uglies. And then he, even though Joe Biden says, oh, we had nothing to do with it, there is a White House visitor log that's signed in and billable hours on this law firm's report that says going to the White House to meet with the Department of Justice. And literally it matches up with the White House visitor log. And so these people are, and the media is not covering it. Why is the media not covering it? Because they're in on it.
Because it hurts. They're in on it, and it hurts Democrats. And look, if you're a Democrat voter watching this right now, your reaction cannot be, yeah, but Trump. Just absorb what we're saying right now, and just accept that you're getting lied to by commission or omission, and that your party it's corrupt. I don't know what to tell you. Like, this is all nonsense.
And Todd hit the nail on the head. We feel for you. We voted for Mitt Romney. I mean, I gotta say. Oh yeah, David.
This is an interesting angle because you know what you're getting. Yeah, David hits the nail on the head. We know what Democrats are about and what they stand for. Again, you vote for McConnell. You think maybe there's a hope he'll do something right. Look at what he did with the Supreme Court. Yeah, they're worse because they lie to your face.
Right. Yeah, I would take somebody punch me in the face instead of stab me in the back. That's just me. But yeah, so it's funny. So Fannie Willis comes out, and then Letitia James, who is going after Donald Trump for lying about the valuation on his properties, even though I'm betting every property developer in the history of mankind has fudged the value of their properties for their financing. Oh, by the way, banks don't use that valuation. They don't just take Trump's word for it.
I didn't know. I don't know if you know this, Jason, but the people that lent Donald Trump money, they approved all of that. They approved the entire process. So forget what Donald Trump said. All the financial institutions agreed with him.
Well, yeah, and what's really funny too, they actually testified and said, yeah, we don't have an issue. So they're going after destroying Trump's business when there's no victim. And the people that even supposedly were screwed are like, yeah, no, we were fine with the deal. Like, we did our own valuations. This is all under testimony.
And Biden voters, just ask yourself, would they be doing this if Donald Trump didn't announce his running in 2024?
Answer, hell no. And that's what's funny. So they are doing everything they can because they are pissed at Donald Trump. And why are they pissed at Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump woke up people like me and Todd and you folks watching about how this government is screwing us over. And he told you, and he tried to fight back against it. And the elites hate him for it. In fact, we should play the quote from Nancy this morning.
This is a neck-and-neck race, and no one feels very comfortable on the Democratic side of things that Donald Trump isn't going to be the next president.
Well, I don't think that nobody feels. I think many of us know that it is impossible for him to be the president again with what he is proposing.
First, is there a creepier looking human being than Nancy Pelosi?
Man, people like her make you hope for Judgment Day, Jason.
Oh my God. And listen to what she said, folks. He can't be president again. Like, the elites are scared of this man, and they're going to stop at nothing to stop him from.
And they're not afraid about losing democracy in America. They're worried about losing their perch at the top of the pedestal where they control all the strings and manipulate everybody else. They certainly don't. Nancy Pelosi does not care about you, Jason. She does not care about David, who just commented. She doesn't care about Paul and Ron at Split Rock. She doesn't care about her constituents. Nobody. She cares about the little power that she's carved out, and Donald Trump is a threat to that, as he is all of those insiders in D.C.
Right. And when you say why are they pissed at Donald Trump? Well, they're pissed because he woke us up. Mm-hmm. And that's where on the left, they almost got it because Bernie was so close. Hillary screwed him over. But the Bernie guys, even though they were horrible ideologically, like they had the worst ideas.
I'm sorry, communism is an awful idea, and you are stupid if you think it's going to work.
Correct. The one thing I will say about you, though, is you were so close to having a Trump on the left.
They knew the system was rigged against them. They were halfway there. They just they think that somehow making government larger and more powerful under a communist state is the answer to a corrupt government. Guys, help me out here in the comments if you are a communist or supported Bernie Sanders, because I can't for the life of me figure that one out.
And you know what? The dude takes the book deal. And not to blow up the left, it's truly remarkable. But back to Michelle. So here's what they're going to do. And I think I'm more and more convinced of this as I chew on it with Michelle Obama. They're not running a primary on the left. They're not doing debates. They're not doing any of that. Dean Phillips, who's from Minnesota, horrible ideas, pretty decent guy. I actually met him a few times before he was in politics. Horrible ideas, pretty good guy. And life can be like that. Where
he sums up Minnesotans, I would say, Jason.
What's that?
He sums up Minnesotans. This is what we're about. Most people here are good people. They just don't know how stupid the ideas they hold are.
Exactly. Dean Phillips running. Marianne Williams. RFK Jr.'s running. He decided to go independent because they weren't going to run any primaries. So the Democrats are not going to run primaries. They're not going to give anybody a chance to upseat or to unseat Joe Biden. But here's what's going to happen at the DNC in Chicago, Illinois. Joe Biden's going to have something happen. Joe Biden's going to have something wrong. I'd have to look up the date on the DNC, but it's summer.
Is it August they do that? July? Here, I'll look that up.
It's like July or August. And so then the campaign for president is that July, August, whenever it is.
August 19th.
August 19th through October. So what they've probably sold Big Mike on is the fact that you don't really need to campaign for president. Because like Trump's been running for 2 years, DeSantis, Nikki Haley, all these people have been running their campaigns for a couple of years.
I mean, hell, I think the Obamas have been running the White House this entire time. So
right, yes, good point. But like Big Mike, they just get to drop him in August, and black woman, nobody's going to squawk. How can you dare stand up against the Obamas? Like nobody ever says anything bad about the Obamas. And then they can pretty much say, like, we're going to drop you in.
I don't know about that, Jason.
What's that?
I think if you're paddleboarding, they might say something. I don't know. It's all speculation.
If you're their chef who saw the sausage all of a sudden. But yeah, Big Mike, he's going to come in. He's going to drop in, have to campaign for like 60 days and then be president. Like that's a conspiracy theory, but I see the stars lining up on that. And I might owe Todd like $200 for that because
Jason, I would rather not get your money. I mean,
right?
Of all the people they could run, I think Michelle Obama, and this is why they will pick her. I think she's the most electable on the Democrats because people have no bad feelings about Obama. If you're a Democrat and you're like, oh, Joe Biden just was the bad pick here, but Barack, he knew how to be a Democrat the right way, or he knew how to be president. He was classy. I mean, Biden said he was well-spoken. I mean, I think that counts for something for some people. You look at the criticism of Trump, like, oh, he's too crude and crass, and he can't get sentences together. He uses dumb words. Like, I think Obama is looking better and better.
Yeah, and the fact that actually Michelle has never done anything is
no
like
dirt
in her favor, right? I had picked Gavin Newsom, but when you trot Gavin out, like California's doing pretty bad right now. They're giving sex change to illegal immigrants. Like Gavin's going to have the government
health care. I mean, you can be an American citizen and you don't have health care, but an illegal does. They just got there. So
yeah. And they're going to, the California government is going to pay for illegal alien sex changes.
Just think about that. And Jason, just think about this. There will be Democrat voters that would look at Gavin Newsom and say he didn't run California very well, and they think that a different Democrat's going to have a different outcome.
Right. But that's where Big Mike lands in, is that if he, like, he has no, sorry, I'm going to get misgendered on YouTube and Facebook. But Michelle Obama has no track record, so they
put
can't
this comment
say.
Up there. Ricky Rooks gets comment of the day. I don't know if we can read that.
Michael Obama would not make a pimple on a real president's ass. Here's the thing, though, Ricky, gotta say it. If Michelle's running, that's going to be a tough election.
I think so. And honestly, even if you wouldn't make a pimple on a real president's ass, it doesn't matter if you get elected or you get put in the White House. At the end of the day, you're there, no matter how awful you're going to be.
Yeah. But anyway, so they're distracting. They're having us fighting. They're selling themselves out on the Republicans. Todd, I think it's time we got to get into this congressional stock.
We got to do it. Look, if you've been following along so far and you're voting for Joe Biden, I hope we have planted some seeds that make you think, and hopefully those seeds grow into larger plants that make you really reflect. But Jason, it's time to go against the establishment, because at the end of the day, if you're in Washington, D.C., you are probably corrupt and you don't care about your voters on either side. You're there to make money for yourself and enrich the lobbyist and enrich the MIC. So let's get into it, folks. Believe it or not, you know that they're doing insider trading. You know that they're making a lot of money. I don't think you know just how much of it they are doing and how much of it they are making.
Yeah. So first of all, shout out to Will. He's one of our writers on the AmericanTribune.news. So for those that are watching the show, we have www.theamericantribune.com. That's where we put our kind of lighter weight, fun stuff, talk about news, sports, politics, things you talk about at your bar or restaurant. We also have the AmericanTribune.news. So type in www.theamericantribune.news. That's our subscription site. That's where we do our deep dives. We've done a lot of Epstein stuff. We've done a lot of stuff about South Africa. This just in, if you don't know what's going on in South Africa, horrible. We do a lot of exposing government corruption. This week, we'll put a piece together, phenomenal piece that we were talking about. That's Congressional stock traders beat the market and the hedge funds again. So I'll be reading and referencing some of that material. But if you're like, what did Jason say? You can go to the AmericanTribune.news and you can actually read the article for yourself. So what's interesting is if you are in Congress, you are not prohibited from doing insider trading if you learn information in the context of your job that could impact stocks. So he had quoted the Loyola University of Chicago Law School blog that talked about insider trading isn't illegal if you're a member of Congress. And it was a longer piece. But it talks about, simply put, insider trading is illegal. But if you are a member of Congress, there is a loophole. Members of Congress and their families are allowed to trade stocks with almost no limitations. There isn't a limit on lawmakers trading stocks based on classified information, nor is there oversight regarding trades that lawmakers are allowed to make based on other information that are privy to as part of their job. This is a glaring contrast to strict insider trading laws. Companies are well aware of this loophole and give Congress members special access to IPO stocks prior to their being made to the general public. So, Todd, do you want to explain what insider trading is?
Let's boil this down, folks. I hope that's hitting you pretty hard right now. Insider trading means you have inside access. You got inside baseball. You know something about company X, Y, or Z before that information goes public. Ergo, you are the first one that can make a call, a put. You can buy options. You can go buy individual stocks. You can invest your money knowing pretty much where that money is going to go, that your account value will increase before you and I, Jason, retail traders, have any access to that, any idea that that's going to happen. And so you think about some runs, NVIDIA, Tesla, a lot of these tech stocks, Nancy Pelosi, when she went to Taiwan, by the way, to go check out these chip manufacturers, you can guarantee there was some insider information with that one too. But they just have access to information before the rest of us do. And so we miss out on the massive gains that happen. Or if you're going to go the other way, this company's got a bad earnings report coming out. I'm going to bet against that right now and make sure that, even though the company loses money, I'm going to make money on that options that I just put in.
Yeah. And it's funny because these corporations trade that information. So to put it in simple layman terms, and Roger is spot on, long story short.
Thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Roger. Episode over. All right, I'm going to go through a few more examples. But so if I worked for a major corporation and I call Todd, who's just my buddy, and go, hey, Todd, we're going to announce earnings. It's looking really bad. Todd can go do a short sale on the stock, figuring the stock goes down when they announce bad earnings. Todd can make a killing. Todd can make a shitload of money. Todd can also then end up in prison, and I can end up in prison too, because me telling Todd confidential information that's going to affect the stock price is insider trading. That is illegal. Now, if you are a member of Congress and over the course of your duties, you learn information. So if Todd is my U.S. member of the House and I'm talking to Todd about something government related and say, yeah, my earnings are going to suck for this company, I can say that to Todd. Todd, as a congressman, takes action on that, and they can have the loopholes where he can make that trade because he's in Congress. This is a great example the article cites. One example of how this works was seen in 2008. Visa communicated with Nancy Pelosi and let her know about an early IPO, so initial public offering of a stock. And she made $100,000 on that trade. Concurrently, I'm sure these two things are unrelated. At the time, there was legislation, financial regulation that Visa strongly opposed. It turned out Nancy Pelosi, as Speaker of the House, never let that legislation hit the House floor.
You don't say.
You don't say. So they give Nancy insider information about an IPO. She makes $100,000. There's financial records for this. Coincidentally, at the same time, she's Speaker of the House. The House gets to decide what legislation that you're going to pass. And this was financial legislation. And Nancy's like, we're not putting that on the House floor. And that same people, she made that decision based on the, because that's what the people that gave her the information from Visa wanted. They didn't want that legislation put into place. Now, people will say, like, I thought people were banned. So in April of 2012, Congress passed the Stock Act. It was a policy that on its face you thought would address the problem and curtail the type of insider trading that lawmakers have long been able to profit off of. But Stock Act has effectively been gutted in the ensuing years following its adoption. One key portion of the Stock Act that has been neutralized is the disclosure provision. This change removed the accessibility and transparency of the original version of the act that made these trades by lawmakers readily available for the public to see. So they passed this law in 2012. And Todd, this was going to shut down congressmen and women trading stock. Now, your congressmen and women who are trading the stock are the one writing the legislation. So how effective do you think that legislation is going to be?
Folks, I'm going to let you all answer that question on your own.
Right.
Are congressional members incentivized or disincentivized to write legislation that will limit how much money they can make?
Right. So the Stock Trading Act, which was passed and put into place in 2012, was supposed to make it really difficult for Congress members to trade stock. In 2013, 115 members of Congress traded $1 billion in stocks and did 11,000 transactions and outperformed the Standard & Poor's 500. So let's see. They passed the law that they write themselves to limit stock trading, and then it turns out that law didn't really stop anything, and they still outperform the Standard & Poor's 500 index. Now, we should probably talk about that, Todd, because a lot of people don't know what the S&P 500 is.
I think, who was it? Roger probably wants a long story short. So Roger, this one's for you. In short, you got some of the 500 biggest companies in terms of market cap all rolled into one, and you can track generally, since they're so big, is the market going up? Is it going down? Right. And so you can look at your returns that way and say, all right, most of the companies did all right this year. I made a little bit of money in the stock market, generally speaking. Jason, I'm trying to keep this short, and I just don't know how to make it so concise for everybody. If you want to help me out with that.
Well, I was going to say, so there's 8,000 stocks traded on, or 8 or 9,000 on the New York Stock Exchange. That's so many stock symbols. So 8,000 stocks, they take the top 500 and they combine all those and they average out how those stocks did. And it's kind of the biggest indicator. That's that top like 20% of the stocks and how they do. Now, to put in perspective, if you're a finance manager, we all got our finance guy, right? You got your investment guy, oh, my barber introduced me to this guy and he invests in these stocks. And so when you're trading individual stocks, the Wharton School of Business did a study and said, so these are professionals. These are professional stock traders, all the computers, all the stuff, all the degrees, all the everything. These guys for a living trade stocks, and only 10% of those stock traders beat the Standard & Poor's 500. So if you take the top 10 or 20% of the companies on in the stock market, 1 out of 10 professional money guys can beat that number.
And Jason, let me expound on that a little bit more. So my investments there, I'm all in ETFs. I'm in the entire index fund in the market there because I'm not messing around. I used to play around with my Tesla and try to go up with Tesla. But again, we're retail investors. We're the last to find out about anything. So here I am buying at the peaks and it would go down. I don't mess around with individual stocks. So when you're buying I'm going in the S&P 500 or I'm in a total index fund. I'm not messing around. I'm letting those companies do their thing. I'm not thinking about day-to-day trades. Whereas these fund managers, they're actively trading. They're looking at, okay, whose reports are coming out. I'm going to go invest in this stock, or I'm going to go buy some of these mutual funds, and I'm trying to get my investors the best return. Jason is saying that only 10% of those guys do better actively trading than had they just put your money in this S&P 500 or a total index fund and just let it sit there and done nothing. Okay, so the best in the world with all the information and all the numbers, they're crunching that. Only 10% actually do better than just letting your money sit there in these S&P 500 funds.
Right. So one would think then if you got several hundred members of Congress, we had talked about in 2012, it was 115 members of Congress that traded stocks. The data's not real good, but you got a couple hundred members of Congress trading stocks. So if only 10% of the professionals could beat the S&P 500, and you think, okay, let's say all the Congress, let's take the House, the Senate, throw them together. You're talking 400 or 500 people. 10% of the professionals can beat it. So these guys who are actually legislators, they got to be way less than that, right, Todd?
Maybe 1% beats the market because sometimes you get lucky. So
right.
Let's say 50, maybe, or 5. Let's go move those decimals even farther.
Right. Well, we better see the chart.
Should we show the graphic, Jason?
Let's show the chart. All right. So if you look at this, chart, that little yellow number, third, fourth, fifth from the bottom at 24.8%. That is your Standard & Poor's 500. If you notice, there's some people below that. Mitch McConnell actually had a rough year. Ro Khanna, those kind of guys. But look at all the members of the House of Representatives that are above the line. These people are outperforming the top 10% of financial investors. And it's interesting because if you look on the line, we mentioned Dan Crenshaw, the pirate that is the Rhino pirate. He probably needs a better name. Dan Crenshaw is at 38.2%. He outperformed in 2022 the Standard & Index 500. Now, if you talk to Dan Crenshaw, Dan Crenshaw will say, oh, there's nothing to that. I don't do a lot of trading. I only got, 10, 20 grand. Record show he's got 300 grand that he's done trades in. I just traded on my E-Trade account and I hear the news and it gives me something to do. And I kind of look at it like the World Series of Poker. Like, you can kind of know a little bit about the poker world. You can show up for the World Series of Poker. Maybe you have a good run and you do really good against the professionals in the World Series of Poker, and you're going to have a great 1 year run. You're going to have a good story. Hey, Dan Crenshaw, you pop up on that year. No harm, no foul. I don't feel bad for you. Like, you could have got lucky. You picked a few good stocks that year. Todd, how many years has Dan Crenshaw been on this list?
3 years in a row. Now ask yourself, how many years in a row are the top hedge fund managers outperforming the S&P 500?
Right. Think of that.
You have to
now
do
I gotta look.
times 1/10 times 1/10, maybe to approximate how often these guys get up there. And for Dan Crenshaw to outperform the market 3 years in a row is basically statistically impossible, just with him trading with the same information as you and I.
Now, Todd, when did Dan Crenshaw go into Congress? I just had to look it up.
If I had to guess, I'm going to say 2016.
2018.
Oh, so as soon as he got there, he got really good at trading stocks.
Think of that, folks. If you believe in coincidences and you think it's ironic, just pure luck that Dan Crenshaw suddenly outperforms the top 10% of financial advisors 3 years in a row, like, you're a special kind of stupid. I don't know what to say, folks. Now here's what the game is so if you look at these folks, so from Will's article, if 90 to 95% of active managers, people who dedicate all day, every day, and vast amounts of research, can't beat the market consistently, it's highly unlikely that a member of Congress who is theoretically spending his day legislating and politicking could do so 3 years in a row. What's ironic, too, is that if you look at what trades that they're competing, it's related to committees and legislation that they supervise.
Color me shocked, Jason. So they're getting special information on their committee, and then they're turning around and making lots of money on that.
And the beauty of it is, it's all legal.
Well, Jason, I had to go off. I know we're making fun of Crenshaw here, and he deserves it. Brian Higgins, though, 238% outperforming. I had to look up his background. Maybe he's a financial guy. Can I read off his Wikipedia bio to you, Jason?
Go for it.
Graduates college. Right after college, he goes on the Buffalo City Council, and then he goes into the New York Assembly, and then he goes to the House. So this man has been in politics his entire adult life. He had a degree in political science.
Huh.
I think his degree is in how to game the system. So you're telling me that the number one guy on the list has been in politics his entire life, and in college had a political science degree, not finance, and he's on the top. It must. And
it's fascinating too as you go down the list, that like the top few names you haven't heard of, but you get down to Richard Blumenthal, Nancy Pelosi, Pete Sessions, Susan Collins.
These people have been there a long time.
And then you get into the plugged-in people. Dan Goldman, like, he's the guy that talks about how corrupt Donald Trump is. Yeah, Dan Goldman, you just outperformed the S&P 500. And by the way, Dan Goldman's freaking rich, and he's got a lot of money in the stock market. Like,
so when you see that percentage, just imagine starting off with billions of dollars and then magnifying that by 50%.
And that will be the thing, just to defend Brian. We like to cover both sides. We don't know how much Brian had in the market. Brian might have had $1,000 and he made 3,000. Like, that's Dan Crenshaw's argument. I only got 10,000. It's shown Dan Crenshaw's done like $300,000 worth of trades. But like, that's the thing, is like, none of this is being disclosed. Even from Minnesota, Tina Smith. God love Tina Smith. She is for us, and she's honest as a day and long. She had a 35.4% increase in 2022, which outperformed the S&P by 10%.
And she's the most unimpressive. So I keep saying this, and it's not because we're from Minnesota. She has to be the least impressive person in the U.S. Senate. And she was picked because she's inoffensive, and that's what Minnesotans love. So they'll reelect Tina Smith forever and ever because she doesn't rub them the wrong way.
Yeah, when I see Tina Smith talk as a Minnesotan, I don't think there's a financial guru. Like, it's like,
I don't even. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it there, Tina. If you follow her Twitter, all she talks about is reproductive freedom, so that's her focus.
Right? Yeah, that's what she's all about. So we paint the picture. The government it's okay if you're in Congress to do trades. Now, this is for our Democrat friends and, well, I guess, and our Republican friends, because they always tell us Republicans are the dishonest ones. Republicans,
they're the party of Wall Street. Yeah, never mind that I think like 90% of Wall Street donations went to Clinton in 2016 or something like that.
And this is what's funny. This chart didn't used to be like this. You go back 20, 30, 50 years in the Jimmy Carter era, this would have been a completely different chart. And this is why Democrats don't realize their party got sold out to Wall Street. Like when they said the Republican Party was owned by Wall Street and big business, they were right. Now, so are the Democrats. So this is the average. Todd, take us through the results here.
So same thing. Instead of individuals, now it's just by party. So you can see as a whole, the Democrat Party outperforms the S&P 500, whereas the Republican Party, and again, we had a lot of red names on the list there, but they slightly underperformed overall as a party. But Jason, what jumps out to me when I see that is the Democrats are just full of BS because they will tell you we are for the little guy. While they go and take all their information and enrich themselves. And I don't know about you, but I don't see a lot of Democrat voters benefiting from them being in power.
No, and this is remarkable, folks. If you take every Democrat member of Congress that invested in the stock market and you added them all up, they outperformed the best financial managers by 10%.
On a yearly basis. Not just once, every single year.
Right. And it's just remarkable. Like you don't just show up at the U.S. Open and win the golf tournament. Not at some point, like, there's small sample size, right? And the bigger the sample size is, the more the pattern develops itself. But I guarantee you, your friend on the left, your neighbor with the Joe Biden sign, if you show him this stat, it's going to break their brain. They're not going to understand. And that's why we talk about sharing this content, share with people you might not agree with, because this should make them mad too. And here's what's interesting. I'm going back to what Will wrote. He said the public isn't blind to what Congress is up to. In 2023, a public survey by the Public for Public Consolidation at the University of Maryland School of Public Policy. This is not a right-wing organization. It's frickin' Maryland. Which, Todd, Maryland, red or blue?
Deep blue.
Deep blue. And a university, red or blue?
Always blue.
Always blue. So they did a poll. They did a study polling voters. 86% of Republicans, 87% of Democrats, 88% of independents wanted there to be ban on stock trading by members of Congress. Across the board, everybody is higher than 80, 90%. They actually talk about the president, vice president, Supreme Court being prohibited from trading stocks. That all pulled 87, 87, 90, and 82. Democrats and Republicans agree on this. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why doesn't this get done? Why do your elected officials not follow through and implement something that 90% of the American people want? The reason is because they are distracting you with all this bullshit. They're convincing Democrats that Republicans want to make them have forced birth. Idiots like Tina Smith, that's all she talks about. Dan Crenshaw wants us to go to another war. These rhinos are leading you down this path. They're making you hate Democrats too, folks. Don't think we're not falling for it too. But they're getting average citizens to fight so that we don't say, hey, we're a Republican, we want to ban stock trading. You're a Democrat. You all agree you want to ban stock trading too. So let's both go to our congressional representative and we agree on that. We don't agree on a board. We don't agree on a million things. Why don't we get this thing done that will move the needle for the American people? And that's because when you get up in Congress, you get sucked up into that elite class. And even if you went there with the best of intentions, you get sucked into this money, you get sucked into the corruption. And that's why it's important that not only do we support President Trump, but we support America First candidates. They're going to put a stop to this bullshit. So, Todd, thoughts on that?
I asked the question earlier. Now is a good time to ask it again. And look, full disclosure, there are rhinos out there, and most of them are useless in Washington, D.C. if you're voting for a Republican. This just in. However, from an ideological standpoint, Jason, you and I are looking for candidates. This is why we support Trump. This is why we support the MAGA movement, that are going to go in and shake things up and say, we are here to represent the people. If you are a Democrat and you have a problem with this, I don't know how you are voting for a big government right now. You are voting for candidates willingly. Sometimes we vote Republican because it's the lesser of two evils, but you go in there, vote, and pull the lever for the party of big government, and you think that this will not continue to be an issue. I got news for you. If you vote for these people to create a larger government, you're going to get a larger government, and it's never going to give you more freedom, and it's not going to stop insider trading. I know we are a nonpartisan show, but sometimes, Jason, call me out here, but I don't see how a Democrat can get mad about this when they specifically vote for it vis-a-vis larger government. We roll the dice on Republicans. Democrats can't say that.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. And actually, speaking about MAGA candidates, like this year, there's some good ones. Like I've done an interview with Sags, who's running for Romney's seat out in Utah.
Please, Utah, get rid of Romney.
Yeah, get rid of Romney. And I mean, he's retiring already, I think. Over on the House side, J.R. Mikowski's running again. Really strong MAGA guy, good dude. Brandon Gill, who I've worked with before, he's running down in Texas. So we've got a chance. But folks, it's important everybody gets involved and we get rid of these swamp creatures. And if you're a Republican, don't accept a rhino. And I'm going to say this too on the Democrat side. You have these corporate elitists on your side too. And you have to get rid of them. And don't let them demonize those of us on the right who like President Trump. Like, we're really not going to go lock up the gay people. We're really not going to like fire up the internment camps. If anybody's getting locked up, we would just soon go to Washington and lock up all of them. Like, if you wanted to say who I want to lock up, I would much rather lock up every member of the House of Representatives, other than maybe a couple of them. I mean, like Matt Gaetz, I like. On the left, Ro Khanna, pretty good dude. Like,
speaking of insider training, Ro Khanna has introduced legislation to stop stock trades if you are in Congress. That's some good stuff right there.
Yeah, and like he's got a lot of horrible ideas too. But on the flip side, like he can be an American up there that can have bad ideas too. Like, we get them on both sides. So anyway, so folks, the way we beat this, the way we save our country is by getting American citizens unite. We all need to be Tiberius. We all need to understand that the people keeping us down aren't Democrats or Republicans. It is our elite class. And the more we can unite together to fight against that elite class, the more successful that will be. They're leading this country down a dangerous path. A path to socialism, a path to World War III, a path to financial collapse. And they're doing it laughing all the way to the bank, because they're doing it because they're just getting bought off by stock trades and all this stuff. We have to stop letting them do that. So,
absolutely,
Todd,
Jason. This was a great show. This hour went by fast today. The other plug I'm going to make, folks, we just opened up the American Tribune store. Go to the AmericanTribuneStore.com. You can get some merch. You can get some of our labeled merch. We got some other stuff out there. Supporters of Donald Trump, get some of that stuff as well. And be sure to check back because we're always adding new products.
Yeah. And folks, for those who turned in listening to us rant, thank you so much. We appreciate you guys. We got a lot of support. Todd and I were just normal dudes working normal jobs, and we said, what can we do to help save the country? And that's why we do the American Tribune. We are trying to cover information we think the average person needs to know. We are conservatives. We support conservative values, but honestly, that doesn't mean we're Republicans. And that's what I think it's important to understand. People that love America, we all need to unite, whether you're on the right or left, to take this country back before these assholes destroy it. So we appreciate you. Do us a favor, give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share. And I'll also say, if you don't do it, hit subscribe. Follow Todd and I on Twitter. A lot of people are watching on our Facebook page. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications. And we appreciate your support. And thanks for tuning in.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you next Friday.
See you next Friday.